I would like to begin this interview just like I begin every interview by welcoming you, Wendy, to Aaron's Opinion. And the first question that I certainly ask every guest gets this question. I asked Christopher this, and I'm going to ask you this. Who are you? Who is Wendy?
Well, Wendy is, I guess, first and foremost, a mom and a wife. Um, I am a CEO of a health business, and I just enjoy life, I guess, is my best explanation. I have a great time and make every minute of the time that I can.
And that's really good. That's really, really excellent. So, you, of course, are not a broadcaster or a podcaster, but how did would you like to share with the guests or with the audience, I should say? Because I know that you post a lot on Facebook, you do a lot of lives on Facebook about this, but would you like to share with us about your health journey yourself, if you want, and then how you got into this health company and your whole philosophy about how to live a healthy life? Because a lot of blind people and a lot of everybody needs to hear this information. So, do you want to talk about that for a bit? You're welcome to.
I sure can. Um, I mean, for me personally, my story started the winter of 2020. I had foot surgery. And as a result of my foot surgery, I ended up having blood clots. I had four in my right leg and one in each of my lungs.
Oh my
Um,
God.
yeah, I hate to say, actually dumb enough not to be scared that day, because I had no idea how serious my situation really was. But I came through that just fine, but decided it was really time to take my health very seriously. I was considered morbidly obese at the time. I have no problems. I share it openly, but I am 5'3" and my high was about 240 pounds. So I decided it was time to get healthy. I was a type 2 diabetic and I was on blood pressure meds. I got hooked up with a health coach, and within 5 days, I knew it was very different. And within about 3 weeks, I decided it was time to share it forward. Between my husband, myself, and Christopher, we are about 267 pounds lighter between all three of us. And I haven't felt as good as I feel right now since I was probably in high school. And I'm grateful. Because of the weight loss, I am not a type 2 diabetic and I am no longer on blood pressure meds. So it is the most, I've tried everything with my weight and my health before, and this was the first time that I actually found something that worked and was easy, and it's life changing. Now, I got involved as a health coach, and that part of things has changed my life. I am able to work from anywhere. And as a result, I sold my house, I bought an RV, and I'm traveling and working all at the same time. So life is very, very good right now.
That's great. That's excellent. So, exactly what is this health coaching company that you and Christopher both promote and work with? Exactly, like what is it and how does it work?
Well, honestly, Aaron, it's really hard to go into specific details. And the only reason is because we have about 10 different programs. So it really is very, very individualized. And that's what makes it so successful. But it is designed by a doctor. It's just about how to actually fuel and feed our bodies the way our bodies are really designed to be fed. And like I said, it just really depends on what each individual person's health is, what their health goals are. And by working with a one-on-one coach, you can customize it. And then also you have somebody to be accountable to, I guess, when you're kind of, working with somebody one-on-one that you're, checking in with and stuff like that. We also have an entire community. So it's just it's a fabulous system, but like I said, it's really hard to go into the exact details because there's just so many different aspects of it, if that makes sense.
It does. It does. Sure, sure, sure. Um, okay, well, we'll come back to that in a few minutes. But so then, usually I'm talking to a guest who is already blind.
Mhm.
Like me, by the way, I was born blind with glaucoma.
Okay.
Christopher, of course, is blind. What, you know, before I guess, can you talk about your journey as a parent of someone who is blind? Because I think that's a very unique and important discussion to have.
Mhm. Um, I yeah, so for everybody that doesn't know, so Chris was actually born 9 weeks premature. So my pregnancy had been completely normal up until about the week before he was born, and then there'd been a few kind of weird things going on, and then all hell broke loose, shall we say? Um, but so that was sort of a whole new experience. I mean, I didn't have I didn't have any experience in the blind community, so it took lots of learning. As a parent with a young blind child, it's a lot of advocacy. Um, and even as with him being a young adult at this point, it's still, for him now. I mean, but it's teaching and teaching, from a young age, learning from, you know, mom and dad being the advocates to, okay, mom and dad being an advocate and you get a say, to you get a say and mom and dad are behind you. It's taking those steps to teach him how to advocate for himself, and working through all of those kinds of different systems. um, and really, I think one of the things I heard early on was to treat and expect the same thing of Chris that I would from any other child. Now he's an only child, so, but I have nieces and nephews, and just expecting the same things from him. I told Chris at an early age, we've always had very open conversations about his blindness. I told him I didn't think he should set his sights on being a pilot or a taxi cab driver. But besides that, I really felt he could set his sights on being whatever it was he wanted. And I've supported him and guided him however I could to make those things happen for him. So I don't know if that exactly answers your question.
It does. It sounds vaguely familiar to how I was raised and how I was brought up as well. I'm 30 years old. I might have asked Christopher, but I forgot. What year was Christopher born in?
Chris was born in 98. And to be honest with you, Aaron, your mom helped teach me some of the stuff I needed to know early on.
Well,
So,
that's the other, and questions are popping up, in my mind that I didn't think I would actually ask, but they're just coming up. So before this podcast and I've started to reach out to you, do you like, I mean, it's kind of, it's interesting. Do you like remember, have I ever met you, by the way? I mean, it's kind of,
we probably did when you were a lot younger at Maryland NFB
conventions.
conventions and stuff
Yeah.
like that. Yeah. So, I mean, like I said, you guys were all, because you and Chris are what, about 7 years apart?
We
Because he's
must be.
23.
So then I was born in 91. So I'm
Okay.
30. Yeah.
Yeah. So you guys are about 7 years apart. So, when he was little, you were one of the teens, preteen teens at conventions and stuff like that. But he started going to conventions. He spoke at his first convention. He was 5.
Yeah, yeah. So it's interesting. I don't recall meeting. I'm sure we met, but I don't remember if we met. I was a child or much younger.
Yeah.
And I don't remember meeting Chris, but that doesn't mean that we didn't meet. I just don't remember. Maybe Chris was really little and I was a teenager and didn't really,
Right.
didn't
You
really
were a teenager.
realize, didn't really notice, really. Yeah. That's really interesting. Because not to compare episodes, but I would have never guessed that Chris was 23 because I talked to him and I was just astounded at his ability to broadcast, and his knowledge and appreciation is well above 23. So
Yeah.
that's really good. That's really fascinating. Um, so yeah, I mean, um, what are some of the things that you remember my mother, Jill, teaching you or talking to you about? Or do you remember any interesting conversations, crazy conversations, scary conversations? What do you think as far as raising a blind child and accepting it and dealing with that whole craziness?
Um, I think, I mean, exact conversations with your mom, I'm going to have to really draw on my memory, and I'm not sure. I mean, we were at convention, it was parents talking to parents. So it's hard to say exactly where different information came from with all the different people you'd be surrounded with those weekends. I think probably one of the scariest, or, kind of going into it for Chris, first, the scariest part was always the medical side of things. With the preeminess and some of the complications that came from that, those were, some of the scarier times. But when it's just one on one with blindness, was just always making sure that he was getting an even shot at it. That he was getting the schoolwork and things like that accessible to him in his format, but also I think always not being asked to doing more. A lot of times it would be like, oh, well, this wasn't transcribed in time, so guess what? You have twice the homework tonight that the rest of the students have. Well,
Right.
really, so there were some times when we'd have to go to a few of those battles. Um, I think one of the funniest times, he was in high school, and he and I had been at an appointment with his counselor for planning for college and stuff like that. And it was a snow day, and school was letting out early. There was all kinds of craziness. It was the end of the semester. There was issues with an exam he was supposed to be at. And when we finished the meeting with the counselor that went over, I told him to go see his math teacher concerning his exam so he could, figure out how she wanted to handle it. And then I told him I would meet him back at what they called the resource room, which is where his teacher, the visually impaired, and his para professional was. And as I walked into the room, he had just come into the room, and his TBI was, where had he been? And he told her, well, who told you to go there? Well, I came around the corner and I looked her dead in the eye. And I said, I did, because I sent him to advocate for himself as opposed to sending her to do it. And she was a little offended by that.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
he was in high school, and it was time he learned to advocate for himself, because any other student in that school did not have a TVI or a para with them to, intervene between them and the teachers. Any other student would have had to advocate for themselves. And that's what, so I've always required those kinds of things for him. And, that other teachers, other professionals, and or other students would sort of be bullying and pushing him around was always an issue for me.
Oh yeah.
And where, I tried really, really hard for never to be a helicopter parent, and over top of him, I always was giving him his wings to fly. But if you want to see Mama Bear come out in me, cross me and him when I was teaching him to be an independent adult, and I would get a little cranky.
And so would our family. So would
Yes.
us, and so do we. Although I think for the listeners at home, who maybe don't know us and don't really understand, I think it's fair for me to say that it's very, very difficult to tell. It's a lot harder to know and tell how you need to react. It's all easier said than done, and you can tell
Yeah.
me that better than I can tell you that. It's easier said than done. There's been a lot of times where it's gone both ways, where I either didn't react, needed to, overreacted, sorry, I overreacted. It's very, very, very hard to tell. And
Yeah.
one thing, let's go ahead.
No, no, go ahead.
Oh, oh,
I agree with you.
well,
It can be. There's a fine
it's
line there.
well, the problem is it's always is hard to tell because there's always an excuse. This is the everybody has an excuse, you know. But um
Yeah.
but one thing that that I will say is that unfortunately, although the bullying in high school is unfortunate, it doesn't really stop in university, and it doesn't really stop in the workplace, and it's just sort of it's not acceptable in my estimation, but I really think it's a just a factor of American society. I think that we're a country that harasses and bullies in a lot of different ways. In the workplace, you don't say, well, they're a bully. You just say, well, they're harassing me. But it's the same thing.
Hmm.
Um, and I will tell you that I was brutally bullied all through school, university, in a workplace, in an office after university, and then it just got it got so crazy that I just had to figure out that I'm supposed to work for myself and start my own podcast and do my own thing. But I think it's fair to say that blind people and a lot of society thinks that bullying only occurs when you're a child in high school. No, actually, it starts when you're in high school and it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. But that's just maybe my perception or my opinion. Yeah. Hmm.
It can, and you're right. I mean, and I think it's um, I don't even know that it's just totally blindness or disabilities
It's not
or it's just I think
people.
so many people are so insecure within themselves that that's the only way they can find to make themselves feel good is to take advantage of some other people or make you feel less so they feel better.
Hmm.
And that's definitely one thing that we strive not to do around here in any way, shape, or form, but also to help educate. And I know, and Chris and I've talked about it a lot. I know it's really hard when you're constantly educating people about whether it be blindness or whatever it be, but it's taking that extra few minutes sometimes to say it's okay, ask the question. We were in Virginia Beach. No, we were in Williamsburg,
Mm.
and we were on one of their little shuttle buses one time, and I could see the little girl leaning over and looking at Chris and whispering to her grandmother, and I finally said, I said, sweetheart, I said, if you have a question, you may ask. It's okay. And they did. So they came and they talked to us, and we answered some questions, and but by being open and saying it's okay to ask, this little girl was able to have the opportunity to ask her questions and to learn something. I Sometimes this whole politically correct, we don't say blindness, we say visually impaired, we don't say whatever it be. I think sometimes we've done more disservice to people with differences than we have services, because we've made everybody so afraid of saying the wrong thing, they just don't say anything at all. And that's not
You are
always a
correct.
good thing, you
Yeah,
know?
that's so nice. That's so nice. A lot of times when I had a guide dog, when people wanted to learn about it, I would always educate people about guide dogs when I had a guide dog. But that does get tiring.
Mhm.
In Chris's defense, I can repeat it back to you. I got tired of educating people
Mhm.
about that. That gets old.
It
Um,
does.
or there was um, well, kind of an interesting story. There was someone um, who in my community who happened to work at one of the stores, and she wasn't blind, but she had a disability, some sort of a learning disability. And each time she saw my dog, she would ask the same questions over and over again. And um, eventually, I got a little frustrated. But then my mother was like, "Aaron, she has a disability like you. She can't help it. She has to ask the same questions." And I get that, and I kind of remember that.
Yeah.
But I'm sure there's a thousand other examples of that. But there's a lot of people are. The problem is that a lot of people are genuinely curious, but when they ask, they come across as because what happens is they get nervous and then they say
Mhm.
something ignorant that they don't mean to say. when in fact a lot of these people, like a little girl, if a little girl asks a question, that's okay. That's
Mhm.
really good. That's someone who needs to learn. But I don't know, like you're right, Wendy. I'm in agreement with you, but also I guess I can kind of contest what you're saying a little and say, like, when you're an adult, if I see an adult and they're around my age and they don't have a disability and they want to start asking questions, I still feel a little weirded out by it. Like, well, maybe you should know, but I don't know. It's kind of weird. Yeah, in a way.
Aaron, I'm going to share a story with you.
Please
We
do.
had at the church I used to attend and that Chris grew up in. We had Chris as a young child, blind. We had several people. We had a young man with had Down syndrome. A young lady who I can't pronounce this condition, okay, but the left side and the right side of her brain were not did not form properly and were not connected properly. But anyway, we had all of these parents with children with disabilities, and they were all within, let's say, 10 years of each other in age. And we all knew how to interact with our children, but we did not know how to interact with each other's children because the other kids had different abilities and other disabilities. So the one young girl, she needed sign language. Okay, she could hear, but she can't form the words. So she uses sign language. Well, I don't understand what she's signing to me. I don't sign. And the young man with Down syndrome, his fine motor skills were very different than like Chris's or mine are. And what we did do, we did actually hold a forum, if you want to say, and shared with everybody at the church that was willing to come and listen how to interact with our kids, because we thought, daggone it, if we are raising children with disabilities and we don't even know how to interact with each other's kids, how can the people that have never been faced with any of it know how? So I guess my point to you is, even though somebody may be an adult, I mean, they could be 50, 60 years old, but if they've never, ever been around anybody with any type of disability, and God bless them, but there are a lot of people in this world who haven't, then it truly is, when somebody says ignorance, it's not a nasty term. If you really look up the word ignorant, it's a lack of knowledge. So when people are coming and asking me questions or asking Chris questions or whatever, I've always tried to take that posture that it's truly a lack of knowledge that they're trying to learn. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yes, it does. Maybe, hopefully, you have encountered more people that genuinely want to learn, and I agree with your opinion about it. I just, maybe in my case, maybe I've met more people who genuinely did not want to learn and just wanted to be rude. Maybe that's, but see, that's the interesting thing about the podcast, right? It's a way for both of us to share knowledge that each of us have. So
Yep.
maybe, luckily, maybe you've had better people. Maybe, I don't know,
Well,
what part of Maryland or Virginia are you from? Maybe you're living in the nicer part with nicer people.
no, you say that, but I mean, we lived. Chris grew up in kind of the rural part of Maryland, if you want to
Right.
say. We lived in Carroll County, so a little more of a farming community, not down in the city. And to be honest with you now, I don't, if you know this or not, I think you do. We talked about it before we got one. But we actually live in an RV now and are traveling the country. So we're having an opportunity to educate a whole lot of people.
And
But
it's wonderful. It's so awesome. So yeah, a lot of times you come on Facebook and you say you're at this RV stop, that RV stop. So how do those RV stops work? How are you planning your journey, and how far are you planning on going?
well, when I figure that out, I'll let you know. We home base for most of the summer we did, and then we took little trips throughout the summer. But about 2 weeks ago, we left Maryland and we took sort of the scenic route, if you want to say, down to Georgia. We went via North Carolina, South Carolina, and then cut across. We're in western Georgia right now. We're at the Georgia-Alabama border, and we are what they call camp hosting, which means we are working at a state park. We actually will start. We're in training at the moment, but we'll be starting in another week, and we are going to be working here until March. And then we're not 100% sure yet. We're thinking and hoping to be able to head to Texas. My best friend from high school lives in Texas, and we're only about 11 hours from him. So we're hoping to maybe head to visit him and his family. And then we'll be working our way back to Maryland because Barry's son, who serves in the Army, will be coming home for leave at the end of March, first part of April. So we're hoping to be able to visit with him some. So as of right now, that's about as much as we've got planned forward.
That sounds exciting. What work will you be doing in this park, and how is that all arranged and organized?
So we actually are we going to our official training on Thursday, but the long and short of it is we make sure that the campers that are supposed to be here are here and have paid, that the campers that are supposed to have left have left. They're not staying over and, owe the state park a little more if they're staying another day or whatever. We open and close the main gates to the state park in the morning and the evenings. And we do this with another couple. So we work for 4 days and they work for 4 days. And we alternate those. And then we have a phone with us that if there's an emergency in the park, they call that number. The park, that's the number that is routed to. And then we find whatever the emergency is, we get the appropriate people to either come fix or take care of or whatever. So we're what they call camp hosts. So we just sort of, take care of the people that are here in the state park camping.
Wow.
So, yeah.
So much. That sounds like a blast. That sounds wonderful. So, with all these campers and RVs, I'm sure you guys have met some characters in these parks, in these campsites. So, have you met anyone from a different country? Have you met any like really interesting people that, share an interesting story? Have you heard some crazy stories? What do you think?
I don't know. We've anybody yet from another country. We've met some really nice people. A lot of people that are doing the same thing we do that are living in RVs. We met a nurse and a gentleman who does he has a construction type stuff. But the cool part is, we met these people. We keep in touch with them on Facebook. And it gives us a chance. So they were actually, at our first stop in North Carolina, we met a couple and they were going over there. The campground we were at, they had donkeys. And they asked Chris if he'd like to go over and feed the donkeys with them. And I was so taken back by that and so flattered because they didn't look at me and ask me if he could go. They weren't afraid to take and have him go with them. She was just like, "Hey, Chris, we're going to go feed the donkeys. Want to come along?" And she offered up an elbow and off they went to feed the donkeys. And I took a picture from across the campground of all of them, the 3 of them over feeding the donkeys. And I posted it to Facebook, and how heartwarming that was to me as a mom, because that just isn't something that had happened a lot, because a lot of times people are afraid, blah, blah, blah. And when she saw it, she was like, "I had no idea that would be that big a deal." And I was like, "No, it's just something that doesn't happen a lot for, kids, adults that have, differences." So we've met people like that. I think some of the best things is some of the things that we've been able to see. The little town that we stayed in North Carolina was the home of the whirligigs. Now, my knowledge of a whirligig was a thing that my grandfather made. It was like a little thing shaped like a duck, and it had the wings that spun around in the wind. Well, true whirligigs are actually very big, and they do use the wind, but they're actually used as like windmills for pumping of water and things like that. And there was a big farm in that town that had them, and they've brought them into this park in the center of town. Naren, you should go in. I do have a live on my Facebook page about it because you can hear them when they spin and the noises that they were making and stuff like that was very fascinating. So it's more things like that, and the opportunity Chris gets to travel and see things. We went down to Savannah, Georgia, and he got to check out that and see and experience sort of sights and sounds of Savannah. So those are some of the fun times that we're getting to have right now as a family.
Oh, that's wonderful. Wonderful. Have you are you enjoying any interesting like ethnic restaurants or family owned restaurants? A lot of times in these small towns all over the country you can find some of the best food and really interesting restaurants. What do you think about that?
We have found some, yes, we've and some good food, and we've checked out a lot of those. One of the things with RVing is there's a group called Harvest Host, which you become a member of. You pay for a membership, and in turn with that membership, the places, which can be small local businesses, farms, things like that, you can actually stay on their property overnight at no charge. And if it's a business, you're asked to patron that business. So we did do that on our way here. And unbeknownst to us at the time, the place we stayed, the gentleman does internet access for anybody that maybe is in a remote location, but he does a lot of it for people with RVs. And when we got here to the state park, we were definitely having some internet issues, not great signals. And we've been able to go back to him and patron his business. And the only reason I'm actually able to do this Zoom with you this evening is because of the equipment he was able to hook us up with yesterday.
Yeah, it's really cool now with the equipment. So how does that work in an RV? A lot of times people in RVs or even the shipping people, all the people who work in ships overseas, a lot of times lose internet for periods of time all the
Yep.
time. So how does that work? Yeah.
It depends on what all you're willing to do or spend or whatever. There's some of them work off of some satellite signals, but this is actually either through. It's basically like a cell signal. I mean, I guess it is a cell signal, but he has a special equipment that he hooked us up with that actually sits on a pole up above the camper, and we're able to just bring it down when we move the camper, and then it wires into a modem that we have mounted in the front part of the camper, and it's sending signal throughout the RV. And like I said, we went from barely one bar to 4 bars now of
Wow.
LTG service. And like I said, we
Wow.
were, I mean, I've been like all over the camper just trying to, and I couldn't even get certain, pictures to upload or download, or, I couldn't get Facebook to work. And I mean, it was a trying few days.
Sure, 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 sure. I've been a teacher for 6 years. And I got into podcasting. I forget if I told you on Messenger, but if I did, I'll tell you again. I got into podcasting because I was listening to podcasts around the blindness community, but I felt that they just were not open enough to having guests from all walks of life and all over the world. And
Mhm.
so that's why I created Aaron's Opinion a couple years ago, and it hasn't been since so recently that only now has it become sort of this whole experience of the YouTube and the podcast and the radio side
Mhm.
and it takes a lot of practice in knowing kind of how you want to set up and kind of how you want to arrange it, what type of arrangement you want. But anyway, I was speaking to students because I teach English as a second language and they're from all over the world. And
Okay.
one of them was a Russian guy, and his job, this sounds like a horrible job, but it's like actually the best job ever. You work on
Mhm.
cargo ships, and he was traveling for like 9 and 10 months out of the year on one contract. And then I
Wow.
say, yeah, it's those people that work on those delivering cargo from country to country, they work ridiculously hard for months out of the year. It's a brutal.
Mhm.
I mean, they make a ton of you make a ton of money, You're paid
Right.
very well, and there's a lot of advantage. Of course, a lot can go wrong, but you're paid very
Right.
well. But then I was telling him, I said, so when you're out in the middle of the ocean, how do you tell what day and time it is? He says, you don't tell what day and time it is. Sometimes the satellites don't even work out there, and you just keep doing the same thing until you get close enough to land, and then they decide what day and time it is. So it's pretty odd. No, there are parts of the world where they don't know, like the people in the ocean that are on the ships, they don't keep track of that. So, but then I said, can you communicate on land if you need to? They say, yeah, ships are equipped with a similar system to what you have, a small Wi-Fi connection that works some of the time fairly well. But even still, that's really incredible that you have that technology and your signal is still really good. So that's really really excellent that we have all this extra technology now. So yeah, yeah.
Yep.
And
No, I'm
really,
grateful.
sure, 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 sure. And what was your motivation to get an RV and to get into that? I mean, it's kind of a big thing to jump into.
Um, it's something that Barry and I had kind of talked about for the past few years. To just sort of travel and see things and stuff like that. And then we got involved in this health coaching, and honestly, COVID hit, and it was like, you know what? I kind of liked working from home. I like this. I'm used to being my own boss. I owned a furniture store, so I'm kind of like, okay, I like being my own boss, and I can do this. And let's sort of start looking at this a little bit more. And um, August of 2020, we were actually just headed away on vacation for the weekend, and we said, okay, let's dream. And I said, all right. So we started dreaming. And the dream was to sell the house and buy an RV and travel looking for where we wanted to retire. Because we have the uncanny ability to just sort of happen into these very unusual places. So instead of all of the standard, well, let's move to Florida, you know, let's move to, whatever. Was like, let's check out, where are the crazy places? Where are some really cool backwoodsy kind of spots that we could find that would be just really great? So we started, okay, let's do this. So we started building for it. We were figuring it was like a 2-year plan to make it happen. And about February, I will say this as a precursor, we are a family of faith. So with that said, around the beginning of February, God decided that that was going to be a very different time frame. And in 6 days, we sold our house. We sold the car that I was looking to get rid of as we were looking to downsize. And we found the camper and truck that we were looking at in October was still available. And we bought that. It all fell into place literally in 6 days.
You know what's very funny about that? We are actually right at this very moment. Our family is in the process of moving as well. So you said that you used to own a furniture store. That's very
I
funny
did.
because my parents are looking for furniture. So that's what it reminds me. So I was about. So my next question. Okay, so help. Where can my parents go to buy furniture? Because they would love to know someone who owns a furniture store. Do you want to get back into the furniture business? Because I know two people who badly need furniture.
No, I really don't. Um, in which direction are you headed?
South Florida.
Um, I have to look and see if the company's still available, if the company's still in business down there. But I can hook them up, probably give them some names of some companies possibly to check out. I'm looking right now real quick online.
Yeah, I mean they know where they're going to get a lot of their stuff from, but I mean just out of curiosity, they would love to know more information about furniture companies. So that's really interesting. How long did you own a furniture store?
20? Yeah, yeah. I'm doing the math real quick. Sorry, about 21 years.
Oh wow, that's amazing. That's so good.
Honestly, when we opened the store, I was just barely pregnant with Christopher.
I see. So you opened it in the 90s in 98. Wow, that's
Yeah,
really really interesting. Mm.
yeah.
And how did you get into that bit? How did you get into the furniture business at that time?
My father had been in business for many years, and we decided to close the business that he had, and we had done some buying of. I used to own an unfinished furniture store, so it was solid wood furniture, but it just hadn't been stained. And my family had bought some furniture from a company like that, and we decided that that was a good avenue, we thought, for us. So we just sort of started looking into that, and I had a radio announcer who was doing some ads for us and stuff like that. And the one thing, my dad's business was a liquor store. It was packaged goods. And he said, "Oh, so you went from one grain to another, from grain alcohol to the grain of solid wood." I liked the little stat. I thought it was a funny little saying, but yeah. So that's sort of what we did. We already owned the building and grounds, and I decided to change the product that we were selling.
Oh, okay, cool. Good to know. Good to know. And that's all very interesting. Well, that is really
Thank you.
really fascinating. So, I mean, I have to wonder, because I care and because I'm so interested in all the success that Christopher has had. Has Christopher heard anything more from his various broadcast connections? How's that going?
Things are still, there's like little things. You keep seeing little glimmers, different things, kind of doors opening. Nothing has flown open, and nobody's offered him the world yet. But there's a reason and a season. So right now, he is still looking. He's putting the feelers out there. He's is doing the health coaching, and is sort of going from there with it to see how it all falls into place. And I'm enjoying him kind of being with us right now as we go through some other crazy times for his health. So it's a good time right now for him to be with family.
Well, that's good. That's good. Yeah, I agree. I agree. It has been these past couple of years have been very, very difficult for
Yes.
in a lot of different ways. These past two or three have been very challenging.
Yeah.
Um, I'm sure you have a lot of questions about me. I'm an overly open person and an overly open blind person and certainly an overly open podcaster. So what do you really want to know, about my life, about my philosophy, about me?
I know. I mean, like you said, I know you had a guide dog. Is there a reason why you don't anymore?
She passed away.
Okay. And you
And
chose not to get another?
right, because I've been working at home now for 6 years, and I'm not like in that city environment where my university was. I'm not in that environment where I really felt that I needed the guide dog next to me like every second. So yeah.
Gotcha.
Hmm.
Gotcha. Okay.
Hmm.
And you were at Towson, correct?
Goucher. Yeah.
At Goucher.
Hmm.
Okay.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um, I my inquisitive mind at the moment is a little bit strapped. We haven't been feeling great at our camper lately. There's been some sickness, and I am suffering from a headache at the moment. So I'm not at my best to think of questions to ask you. So I apologize.
Well, that is fine. That is fine. Um, well, okay. Well, that's all very good. All very, very good. So let's see. Let's see. Is this the first podcast you have ever guested on?
It is.
Oh, that is good. That is good.
I've done some. I think I did ads for our business. I've done some newspaper interviews, but I think this is probably my first. I don't even think I've done a radio interview, so definitely my first podcast. I know that.
Well, okay. I mean, I just want to say I really enjoyed, learning from you and hearing about all this, interesting stuff.
Thank you.
It's all really good. But I guess, I admit that as the conversation winds down, I think we've really covered a lot, and I think you've done an outstanding job, as all guests do. But do you have any words of wisdom or any huge pieces of advice, I guess, for parents? Because there's a lot of parents out there who are in the in the blindness community, either blind parents or parents who have a blind child, and they feel really lost. So, do you have any words of advice for them?
Um, I think one of the biggest things is to be open and honest with your kids. Um, to keep that line of communication always open, that they feel, I think that's in general for parents, but I think especially parents with kids with special needs, to be able to keep that line of communication where they feel a safe place to go and talk, and not to, as I said earlier, not to be a helicopter parent. Yes, protect, advocate, but teach your kids how to advocate for themselves. Don't always be fighting that battle for them. um in high school, Chris had a situation, and he didn't take the level of discrimination as seriously at first as I did. And as we discussed it, he realized that it did need to be addressed. And that next morning, I'd asked him how he wanted to handle it, and he wanted me to come with him to be a backup, but he was going to handle it. And we met with his vice principal,
Hmm.
and he did a fabulous job, because he
May I ask what it was or what happened? Or
um he was in the National Honor Society, and they
great.
were putting together a Christmas, I won't say program, but it was a Secret Santa kind of thing, and they were breaking into small groups, and they had to go shopping and take care of it. They needed a leader for each of the groups. Well, his small group wanted him to be the leader, and the faculty advisor said he could not be.
Hmm.
And his reason that he could not be was because he was blind.
Mm-hmm.
And I was very upset about it. And as we discussed the situation as to how, he had been told, I mean, I think it was probably one of the first times somebody had totally said he could not do something because of his blindness. And when we met with the vice principal before school even started, and they started their day at like 7:30. So to give you an idea how early a morning. And by the time we had gotten out of the meeting and I got to work, which was about 40-minute drive, the teacher that this had happened, who had done this, was calling me to apologize. The school handled things that quickly, and I was
Hmm.
very grateful for that. But I guess my point, as from parent to parent, is give your kids those skills. Don't always be stepping in and doing that for them, because as much as we all would love to live forever, we're not going to be here forever. And our kids and young adults and all that, you're not always by their sides. They need to know how to advocate in the right way. Advocating doesn't mean being in somebody's face and being ignorant. Advocating is knowing your rights and stating them in a just, this is the facts kind of way, without being in somebody's face, without being rude. Chris had a lot of advantages through, he went through the county school systems. He was not homeschooled. He was not in a special school. He wasn't in a school for the blind. He was mainstreamed, and we never had any big problems. And I think because the system knew that we knew what his rights were. So educate yourself, educate your student, and just be fair about, be fair about what you're asking from the system. If they're willing to get you a piece of technology that costs a lot of money, then you can supply the cable to connect it to the home printer to make whatever work, work that way. We always tried to work with the system, but like I said, we always were educated and knew what his rights were, and we're never ignorant with the school system or anything like that, but we're able to get the things that he needed to have.
Yeah, that's really good. And the fact that that teacher called you to apologize really shows that Chris advocating for himself in that moment was the right thing to do. And it shows that they made a mistake. So it shows that it
Yeah,
was it that's proof that it was handled appropriately in the end. That's the proof of it. Yes.
yeah,
So that's
yeah.
that's really cool. That's really interesting. I think, well, I shouldn't say this, but it sounds like in some ways maybe there was more positivity in Chris's experience than in my experience, but who knows? Everybody has ups and downs for sure. But
Yep,
yeah,
yep.
well,
And it's a matter of knowing. We've been have a lot of the right people put in our path at the right time. Um, we were on a trip one time with the family and ended up having a luncheon on a boat and met this woman who, as we get to chit chatting, blah blah blah, it turns out that she actually worked for the federal government and was one of the key writers of IDEA, the law.
wow.
And there have been times, especially when he was in college, that I needed a little guidance on where to find the information I needed. And I could get a hold of her and she could, give me chapter, verse, paragraph on where to find what it was that, how they were maybe stepping on his rights. So, finding those people, there's, Aaron, do you know Carlton Walker?
That I know of the name. The name rings a bell, but I don't know the
Okay.
person, but know of the
What,
name.
you ever want to interview somebody, interview her. Okay. Chris can put you in touch with her. But Carlton, for one, is an attorney. She is the parent of a blind child. She
Mm,
is a teacher of the visually impaired, and she has gotten involved in doing its. I cannot give you the proper name for her company, but
right.
she is doing advocacy work at basically no charge to um, parents and blind students and so on and so forth. She's another one who can give you chapter and verse of the law and where people are stepping, to the point we actually had her on a call with Chris's college before he went back after all the fun with COVID, because this college was stepping on a few of his rights. But, know those people, have those people in your back pocket. So when you need them, they're there to help.
That's so good. Yes. Yeah. Well, anything else? I think we really covered a lot of great stuff in this episode, and know that both you and Christopher are always welcome here on Aaron's Opinion.
Well,
Um,
thank you.
yeah, you did a great job, and if someone ever wants to get in touch with you or your company, how could they do that?
Um, they can get in touch with me on Facebook if they'd like. It's Wendy, my maiden name Cox, Cox, Messersmith. My email is the letters UR healthy vision at gmail.com. And I have no problems. You can always reach me by text or whatever on my cell, which is 410-984-4369.
All right. All right, Wendy, thank you so much for joining me. That's all of my questions, everything I wanted to cover. You did an excellent job, and welcome. You're always welcome here. Thank you for sharing your knowledge, and I know that this will be very helpful to many parents and many, many other blind people around the world. So thanks so much, and
Thank you, Aaron. Thanks for having me.
my pleasure. And I wish you a very good evening there in your campground. Okay,
Thank you.
take care.
Bye bye.